Good morning. Happy Saturday, May 31st. Hurricane season started this morning at about 4:44 a.m. with the storm that came back. No, I'm just kidding. It didn't really. Anybody hear the storm this morning? It rained a little bit. Just a preview. Hopefully that's the worst that we'll get this year. That's the goal anyway. No more storms, right? Or at least storms that will go through here. Good morning. I'm Robin Gomez. I'm the Madeira Beach City Manager. Hopefully everybody understands or knows what the city manager does. In case you don't, you can come back later in October, or you can start to sign up, I should say. Probably next month we'll have some applications where folks that live in Madeira Beach can apply and participate in what's called our Citizens Academy. Our Citizens Academy is we'll choose about 30 residents that will come one evening a month and learn a different aspect of what the city does. So any of you that live here in Madeira Beach and might be interested, see me or Megan Powers at any point today, and we'll give you some information if you're interested in participating in our Citizens Academy. You really get to learn exactly what the city does behind the scenes, every department. It's a couple of hours, one evening a month from October through May. It includes dinner every time you come out. But again, thank you all so very much for coming out to our annual Hurricane Expo. Again, as I said, my name is Robin Gomez. I'm the city manager. I work for the City Commission, our elected officials that I think many of you have met, and if you have not, they are here today. Our Mayor, Anne Marie Brooks, is right over here to my right. Your left, we have Vice Mayor Ray Kerr, I believe is out on the veranda. Commissioner Hoosh Govey is right here behind with the camera. And Commissioner Eddie McGeehan is also, I believe, somewhere on the veranda as well. And our fifth commissioner is Commissioner David Tagliarini. So thank you. If anybody wants to put a name with a face, their portraits are directly back here in the back of the room as you walk in on the left. So they set the policy, the guidance, the vision, the mission for how the city operates. And then the city manager and all the departments provide the day-to-day services, operations, et cetera. Please feel free to ask us any questions at any point in time. We are here to work for all the residents of Madeira Beach, all of our businesses, and certainly the visitors that do come and enjoy our beaches, the village, the pass, or just driving through. But we are here to provide the best possible services for all of our residents and property owners, making sure that Madeira Beach is a great, great city to live, learn, work, and play. Every day of the year, including Christmas and New Year's Day. So again, thank you all for coming out. We're going to have multiple speakers throughout the day in this room. Please feel free to walk outside, visit the vendors, exhibitors, and I will leave you with a couple of items. Number one, when an evacuation order is issued, what should we do? What are we supposed to do? Leave the island. So how many of you have seen the shirts if you go through the village or back when the snack shack was open, the hurricane evacuation shirt? Anybody remember what it says? Step one, grab beer. Step two, run like HE double hockey sticks off the island. That's what my mom says, HE double hockey sticks. So leave the island. We will emphasize over and over and over, evacuation order means please leave the island. It is for your safety, it is for our safety, it is for the safety of everyone. We believe for Hurricane Helene, we were probably about 50% that evacuated the island. For Hurricane Milton, we were probably closer, upward of 90%. I think a lot of the people who were still here saw obviously the devastation, the damages from Helene, and we don't want to do that. It's not worth it. We'll exit the island. So all of you, and I believe most of you are aware, the evacuation orders are issued by Pinellas County government. The Pinellas County administrator, in collaboration with the executive team that involves members of Pinellas County government and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, the Pinellas County School Board, meet and make that decision to evacuate, and then the decision to reopen the access points back out to the barrier island. Trivia. Does anybody know how long is this island? Hopefully all of you are aware that live here. We are on a barrier island, right? We have water on the south side, which is what? Johns Pass Waterway. And then if you go, how long is the island? Does anybody know? No, not just Madeira Beach, but the whole barrier island. How long is it from Johns Pass to Sand Key Pass? Anybody know? No, nobody know? Who lives out here? It is about 13 miles from Johns Pass Waterway, the southern end of Madeira Beach, to Sand Key Pass. It is one island, a barrier island. It's about 13 miles long. In case now you know more information than probably you didn't know before, kind of some useless trivia, as we call it, but 13 miles. There are seven, I believe seven, but the sheriff can correct me, access points. Obviously, Corey Avenue to St. Pete Beach, Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, et cetera, up Walsingham, et cetera, all the way up to the Clearwater Memorial Causeway. So the decision to close and reopen is done countywide. Why? Does it make sense if all of a sudden Madeira Beach reopens our access but the others remain closed? I think it does to some of our residents. They say, yeah, I want to get back and get on my property. But that's why there's a cooperation to make sure that the closing and the opening happen together. So just so all of you are aware. Make sure you do get your reentry pass if you don't already have one. If you have one, they are good for life. So try to keep it in your vehicle is probably a good idea because when we evacuate, the vehicle goes first. So. And a couple of other things. I said it was only two, but it's actually a couple more. Please take the Pinellas County Hurricane Guide with you. A lot of good information on there about what to do, where to go, learn a little bit about the information. Also, how many of you have signed up for Ready Pinellas? Hopefully all of you know what Ready Pinellas is. It is an app you can download on your phone and gives you all the updates to what the county is doing when an emergency happens or if there are road closures, et cetera. So it's called Ready Pinellas. It's in the Hurricane Guide. Please download that if you do not already have that. Any questions before we actually jump in? Any questions? If you have questions, suggestions, comments, concerns, if you're downright angry, or if you're very happy, we want to hear from you. We are here for all of you. We are here to make sure that everybody stays safe. Let us know. We have the luxury of having a lot of information, but we don't know everything. Every storm is unique, as all of you are aware. How many have lived here in the state of Florida for at least 30 years? Quite a few of you. Was anybody by chance in Coral Gables, Homestead, Perrine, or Cutler Ridge, Florida on August the 22nd, 1992? Anybody in the room other than myself? I lived and sat through Hurricane Andrew. I was a student at the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. We were all safe as they put us in these 12-story towers with very, very thick storm shutters. You could barely hear as the estimated 145-mile-an-hour winds, and we were pretty far north from the eye in Coral Gables, if any of you are familiar with that area. Storm goes through, they let us outside, and it looked a lot worse than what we had here. But that was a windstorm. Milton was a windstorm. Helene flooded. Other storms, every storm is unique. Please keep that in mind. But the responses can be unique as well. But please let us know. We will be having additional meetings likely in next month to get some public input, obviously as to our response from Helene and Milton and what we can learn from each other and what we can do better, because that's really the bottom line. Going to introduce, when they come up and speak, the different speakers, they'll introduce themselves. I just want to introduce some of our city staff while they're here. We have Fire Chief Clint Belk, Public Works Director Megan Wepfer, our Community Development Engineer Marcy Forbes, our Community Development Director Jenny Silver, the Assistant to the City Manager in the back Megan Powers, our Community Policing Deputy Corey Snyder, and walking into the room right now, Raul Perez, our Fire Marshal in our Fire Department. So Familiarize yourself with the staff. And again, sorry, Vice Mayor, I introduced you before you walked in. Sorry, but here's Vice Mayor Ray Kerr and Commissioner Eddie McGeehan. So please feel free, this is for all of you. Questions, comments, anything, please let us know. Please let one of the commissioners, the elected officials know, or our mayor, and we will begin the program. I'm going to turn it over to Chief, sea turtles, excuse me. Clearwater Marine Aquarium to talk about sea turtle and sea turtle nesting season.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? My voice does not carry, I apologize. Good morning. My name is Lindsay Flynn. I'm a sea turtle lighting specialist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. You may know us better as FWC. Thank you so much for attending the Expo this morning. I'm here today to talk to you about sea turtle nesting in Florida, some of the challenges they face during the nesting season, and solutions to those challenges. Now, quick question before we get into the nesting nitty-gritty. How many species of sea turtles do you think there are in the world? I will give you a hint. It's at least one. Throw out a number. This is pretty informal. 1,000? 200. 200. No cheating from the peanut gallery. 200. Any other guesses? 5,000. One more. Give me one more. 17. Close. There's 7. There's 7 species of sea turtle in the entire world. Okay. Of those species, how many do you think nest in Florida each year? All of them? 3? 5? 2? Somebody got it. It's 5. Very good. Those species are the loggerhead, the largest species of sea turtle, the leatherback, which can get to about 6 feet in length and up to 1,500 pounds. It's a big one. The hawksbill, the green, and the smallest species of sea turtle, the Kemp's Ridley. Now, among those 5 species, you here in Pinellas County have up to 4 of them nesting here in a given season, which is great. All of them except the hawksbill. The 3 species that nest most commonly throughout the state are the loggerhead, the leatherback, and the green sea turtle. Here in Pinellas County, your winner is the loggerhead sea turtle. That is the one that nests most often. Okay, so now that we know a little bit more about who nests here in Pinellas County and in the state, how do they nest? Well, I'm going to use the loggerhead as an example because, again, they're our most common nester. And it starts with the adult female coming out of the water at night and crawling up onto the beach. Unfortunately, we do not know a whole lot about the cues that they use to select a nest site. I wish we did. We don't. We do know that she crawls somewhere, usually onto the open beach, but sometimes up into the dunes as well. Once she selects the site, she's going to start preparing that site by moving the dry surface sand away with broad strokes of her front flippers. And then she's going to use her rear flippers to dig out a hole. That looks like that. It's like an upside down hole. This up here. That's what it looks like. And you can imagine, sea turtles have flippers, not feet. So how on earth are they going to use a flat flipper to dig that hole? Well, they can curl their rear flippers like a shovel, and they sort of scoop out the sand one flipperful at a time until they make something about that deep. And what's cool is she doesn't do it by sight. She's using her rear flippers, so she's doing it by feeling. So as soon as she can't pull out any more sand, it's time to lay the eggs. And she is going to lay and somewhere between 80 and 120 eggs per nest. She can lay 4 to 6 nests per season, about 1 every 2 weeks. As you can imagine, that is a lot of work. So she does not nest every year. She nests about every 2 to 3 years. Okay, so she's going to lay those eggs, and once she's done, she's going to work backwards. She's going to use her rear flippers to sort of pack in and pat down that sand, and then she's going to use her front flippers to really cast sand. She really gets into her work. She's going to cast sand about, as you can see here in this image. And she's doing that to camouflage the site and the scent of her nest. Once she's done, though, she's going to hopefully crawl immediately back to the water. She doesn't return to her nest. She doesn't provide any maternal care. The only time she's going to come back onto the nesting beach is to lay another nest. And then those eggs down underneath the sand are going to incubate for about 2 months. Now, once the eggs are done incubating and the hatchlings are ready to emerge, they use a special egg tooth called a caruncle to break out of the egg. And then they have this yolk sac, this sac of energy, kind of like a chicken, that they will absorb for the next couple of days. That's the energy that they need to crawl up the nest, out of the nest, along the beach, and to swim in the water in their frenzy period. So that is a finite source of energy that they use to do a lot of work. So once they absorb all of that yolk, they're going to work together as a team, because remember, there's a lot of them down there. They're going to work together, and then they're going to wait at the surface sand. And they're waiting for a drop in temperature that tells them that it's nighttime. It's time to go. So somebody's going to get the idea to start moving, and then their brothers and sisters are going to be like, okay, it's time to go. And it's going to go all the way down the nest. And someone's going to get the idea like, it's go time. And they're going to all come out of the nest together, and it's called a turtle boil because it looks like they're boiling out of the sand, like water boiling over a pot. Now, hopefully, they're going to emerge at night, sometimes during the morning. That's not usual, but sometimes they come out in the morning. And their goal is to emerge immediately from the nest and go straight to the water. We're going to talk about in a couple of minutes why that may not happen, but that's the goal. Now, it's important to remember here that among the hatchlings that manage to make it to the water, only 1 in 1,000 will make it to adulthood. That's 0.1% of all hatchlings that make it to the water will reach adulthood. So it's really important that we do everything we can to conserve our nests, so we're making sure that as many hatchlings get to the water as possible. A really cool fact, did you know that the state of Florida is one of 2 primary nesting locations for loggerhead sea turtles in the entire world? I want you to think in your mind of what that other place, of all the places in the entire world, where is another place where turtles might like to nest? Maybe Central America, okay? Any other guesses? The small country of Oman, which is next to Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So little old Florida and Oman are the biggest sites of loggerhead sea turtle nesting in the entire world. And unfortunately, nesting numbers in Oman recently have declined. So now Florida is arguably the biggest location for these turtles to nest in the entire world. And here in Madeira, we get them. So it's really important now more than ever that we do everything that we can to protect those nests and protect our hatchlings. So now that we know a little bit more about the nesting process, what are some challenges to nesting? Well, one of the things that we like to do, of course, is to enjoy our beach. That's why we live here. And one of the things that kids and families like to do is dig holes while they're out on the beach, and we encourage, people to enjoy themselves while they're out on the beach. But unfortunately, that can lead to some consequences for our sea turtles. Both adults and hatchling sea turtles can fall into these holes while they're on the beach at night. And unfortunately, most often they don't have the ability to get out on their own. Marine turtle permit holders like Clearwater Marine Aquarium, FWC agents often have to come out there and intervene. So we encourage people to mitigate this pretty easily by, at the end of your beach day, simply fill in the holes and create that nice flat beach again so our sea turtles can nest safely at night. One of the other potential challenges they face is beach furniture, toys, trash, and even sandcastles at night. Leaving these items out at night can lead to something like this. Unfortunately, this is an image of a green sea turtle that attempted to nest on a beach, got herself caught underneath some chairs. Sometimes they are able to get out from underneath those, and sometimes they can't. Sometimes we have to intervene and remove those chairs. Sometimes our turtles manage to crawl back into the water with those still entangled on them. And unfortunately, they can drown because they are not able to surface and breathe properly. So it's very important that we remove those items, tents, chairs, toys, remove all those items to make sure it's nice and safe for our turtles. Sandcastles, those don't seem like they'd be that big of a deal, right? It's just a big pile of sand. Well, to us, it's something simple. We just walk right around it. To a hatchling sea turtle that is only about this big when they are born, that looks like Mount Everest to them. So it's very difficult for them to move around or move over those sandcastles. So it's really important that we knock those down at the end of the day. All right. The last challenge I want to talk to you about is a little bit more difficult to manage, and that's artificial lighting. We residents near the beach, we love the beach. We like to live near the beach. That's why we're here. And a lot of other people like to do that too. But it leads to sort of high density of people near our coastal areas. And all those buildings inevitably lead to the use of artificial light for safety reasons. And that can cause issues for our turtles. You can see here in this nighttime satellite image that Pinellas County is very well lit at night. But how could these artificial light sources possibly interfere with turtles that are just using the beach? Well, it turns out that sea turtles actually use brightness as a guide to find the water when they're on the beach. Under natural conditions, the moonlight and the starlight are reflecting off of the water, creating this nice bright horizon. And that's contrasted with the dark silhouette of the beach. So when hatchlings emerge from the nest or adults are done nesting, they're able to navigate very easily to the water because they can follow the moonlight and starlight very easily. Nice bright horizon. Contrast that with something like this, where we have a lot of artificial light sources on the beach. Now that artificial light is competing with that celestial light or that natural light. Turtles are going to go towards wherever's brighter. Where do you think they're going to go in this image? The wrong way. And we find them in areas they should not be. Parking lots, pools, roadways, where unfortunately they can be run over by cars and killed. And it leads to lots of other potential negative impacts as well. So remember I talked about that yolk sac that hatchlings use to crawl up the nest and out of the nest and all these things. That's only a limited amount of energy. So you can imagine if these turtles, these hatchlings, are now going the wrong way and wandering about the beach, that's less and less energy that they now have for swimming. And they have to swim to something called a sargassum weed line. It's a surface patch of algae that can be 5 miles out or it could be 100 miles out. I've gone 94 miles out to hand deliver hatchlings out there. It is far. It took us 5.5 hours to drive out there. That is a big ask for a baby sea turtle. So you can imagine if they're wasting all of this energy out on the beach, they now don't have that energy to swim out there and they may not make it. If they remain on the beach, they can become exhausted, dehydrated. They can desiccate or dry out in the sun, the daylight hours. They can be more vulnerable to land predators, things like coyotes, raccoons, nighttime bird species like the yellow-crowned night heron you see there. They can all predate our turtles. And like I said, we can find them in areas they should not be, particularly pools, parking lots, and roadways where they can be run over by cars. And these negative impacts are not just for hatchlings, it's for adult sea turtles too. So remember, I just mentioned that sea turtles use brightness as a guide to find the water when they're done on the beach. Well, it sort of works in reverse for the adults when they're trying to lay their nest. They're looking for dark silhouettes because that's where the beach is. They know that it's a nice, safe place for them to nest. So if they're emerging from the water and looking about to see where they might want to come ashore, and they see a bunch of bright lights, they're like, "Ooh, nope, this is not for me," and they will leave. They will not even come ashore. So while it's true that they may swim elsewhere and find another place to nest, that new place may not be as good as that other place they were planning to come to beforehand. Maybe this new place has more compact sand, or maybe this new place the beach is very short, so it gets washed over by tide a lot. So now that nest may not be as successful there, whereas it would have been more successful there had we managed the light a little bit better. So too, they can have a difficult time refinding the water. You can see in this image, it's a track of an adult nesting female crawling along the beach instead of back to the water. Again, they're wasting their energy that they may not have later on in the season to lay another nest. And so too, they can find themselves in areas where they're not supposed to be, like tennis courts and pools. And it is very difficult to get adult turtles out of a pool. So that's the bad news. What's the good news? The good news is we have a way to manage artificial light effectively. FWC put out something called the Sea Turtle Lighting Guidelines. This is a list of guidelines that you can use as property owners or those in the lighting industry to provide appropriate lighting for both humans and for turtles. And a part of those guidelines include 3 golden rules, which are keep it low, keep it shielded, and keep it long. I'm going to get into what those actually mean in just a second, but it's important to know here that all 3 of these rules must be followed in order for lights to be sea turtle friendly or wildlife friendly. The first golden rule is to keep it low. That means to keep the mounting height of the fixture as low as possible for the intended purpose. So instead of using a light fixture on a pole like you see here, we're going to lower that light and use something like a pathway light or a low bollard. That way the light is getting to where you need it to be, like a walking path, so that improves human safety, but it's less likely to be seen from the nesting beach, so it's better for sea turtles. Keep it low also refers to keeping the wattage or the lumens of the light source as low as possible for the intended purpose. Again, you want to not use a bright white light because that can actually cause glare for humans. It's more difficult to see, so you want to lower the wattage and lumens for it so it's easier for people to see, but it's less intense and less visible from the nesting beach. It's important to note here that we never ask people to turn their lights off unless it's not needed for human health and safety. So if a decorative fixture like a set of string lights is not needed for safety, then we ask people to remove those. But we certainly want to provide plenty of lighting for people to move about their properties safely. And the good news is there's lots of examples of lights that can be used at a property successfully. There are low pathway lights that are downward directed. These are examples of bollard fixtures. This is an example of an in-ground paver light, so it sits in the ground and shoots outward. You can see some step lights in the bottom right-hand corner, and this is a strip light or a linear light that's under a shielded niche, which effectively lights the pathway there. Golden rule number 2 is to keep it shielded. So we want to shield the light source such that it can't be seen from the nesting beach. And that can be using 2 different methods. One, you can use a fixture with a well-recessed light source, like this wall-mounted fixture where the light source is well into the fixture. Or you can use something like an opaque shield that surrounds the light source, that covers the light so you can't see it from the beach. And there are plenty of beautiful options for people to use at their home. A lot of the times people worry that if they're using sea turtle friendly light, they can't have pretty lights. I don't think that's true. There's lots of different light options that are available to you today. And if you visit some of the tables out out here on the veranda afterwards, we can show you lots of different examples. The last one is to keep it long, and this one, it does not refer to the length of the fixture, rather the wavelength of the light source, and I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but hang tough with me. So light is made up of a lot of different colors. If you've ever looked at a light source through a glass prism, you'll see it break up into all the colors of the rainbow, right? So that's similar to a white light source. It contains a lot of different colors of light. And it runs this spectrum, so the colors are measured as a wavelength in nanometers. Short wavelengths of light are in the purple, blue, and green spectrum. Longer wavelengths of light are in the amber, orange, and red spectrum. Sea turtles are very attracted to short wavelengths of light. So they're attracted to white light because it contains all of the spectrum, and shorter wavelengths of light like blue lights, purple lights, green lights. They are less attracted to orange lights, ambers, and reds, so long as they are true long wavelength lights. There are things like bug bulbs and party bulbs out on the market that are not true long wavelengths. Those are typically coated bulbs, so it's actually a white light source that's coated in an orange or a red, so it looks red to us, but it's not actually a true long wavelength light source. So now that we know that there are good, less disruptive sources of light, where can we find them? Well, FWC maintains a website that has fixtures and bulbs that we have reviewed, and it lists which ones they are and the caveats for them. So not all lights are created equal, and not all light sources are good everywhere throughout the property. So that website not only lists fixtures and bulbs that may be appropriate, but it lists where they should and should not be mounted. And I want to give you guys a quick example of what inappropriate lighting and sea turtle friendly lighting looks like. So I put some cards on your table. Thank you to Clearwater Marine Aquarium for providing those. And I want to do a short little experiment with you. So don't look directly at the light, but of course we have a white light that could be seen at properties. Thank you. We can see that some of these white lights would be at properties regularly. And we have this sea turtle friendly option. This is a wall mounted canister fixture with a well recessed light source. So I want you to use those little cards that I put on your table, and I want to show you what these look like. So I want you to look at the white light first through that blue filter. And you can see that pretty well. So if you were a turtle, wearing your turtle glasses that you have there, you might be attracted to that, right? Similar to the lights in this room right now, you'd be attracted to those because you can see those really well, right? Now I want you to take a look at the amber light source. This is a true amber light source. Can't see it as well, can you? What about now? Now that it's well shielded. So not only is it long wavelength and well shielded, if this is mounted lower to the ground, that turtle is less likely to see it. That's not to say that it won't see it at all. That's to say that it's less likely to be disturbed by it and more likely to be able to orient correctly towards the water. So thank you to Clearwater Marine Aquarium for letting us use those. If you wouldn't mind leaving them on the table so we can use it for the next group of people, we'd appreciate it. All right, and don't forget about your interior lights. So let's take a look at this property. Their exterior lights look pretty good. So they have long wavelength ambers, they're shielded, you can't really see the point source, they're mounted as low to the ground as possible. But oh boy, what is this? This is a bunch of interior white light. So they've done all this good work, but now it's negated by their interior light. What do we do about that? Well, there's lots of things we can do. We encourage people to, of course, close curtains and blinds At night, turn off lights when you leave the room if you're not using them. Move lamps away from the windows. Use fixtures with shades instead of exposed bulbs. Use lights on a dimmer switch. Use warm white instead of bright white bulbs. And you can also use something called window tint or film. A lot of people refer to it as turtle glass. So it is a type of glass that can be manufactured, or a film that can be applied that reduces the amount of light transmittance from the inside to the outside. So any new construction is required to use 45% visible light transmittance. That means it reduces the amount of light we see to 45%. But FWC, of course, recommends a lower transmittance of light down to 15%. And you can see why we recommend that right here. So this is an example of a restaurant out on the East Coast. They applied 15% VLT to their windows and doors. And you can see how dark it is, except where the doors are open. Look at how bright it is inside that restaurant. But you don't see it from the nesting beach because they have that 15% VLT applied to all their doors and windows. This is another example of a parking garage. So you can see they used a lot of white unshielded light, which is not turtle friendly, but they did apply, not only did they make some changes to their exterior lights here, but they applied window tinting as well, which did a lot of work in reducing the amount of light seen from the beach. And a lot of people say, but it messes up my beach view. I moved here to see the beach. The good news is it doesn't really affect your ability to view the beach. It's just like putting on a pair of sunglasses. We want to protect our eyes while we're out on the beach. Well, we can protect our homes by using this 15% VLT as well. It ends up protecting your furniture from sun fade, and it helps with cooling costs. And again, it reduces light transmittance, so it helps the turtles too. So we've talked a lot about challenges and solutions, but what can you do today to help sea turtles? Well, remember, we can fill in our holes and knock down sandcastles, remove chairs and tents and toys from the beach every night. That way our turtles have a clean, flat, safe beach to nest and hatch from. We also encourage people to, if they're taking walks at night, please don't use your white cell phone light, again, because that's a white light. They're very attracted to those. Please turn those off and allow your eyes to adjust to the night. But if you really feel like light is needed for safety, they do sell red LED light sources at the hardware store that you can use out on the beach. I understand that a lot of people who are residents here may be dealing with the aftermath of our hurricanes this last year, and my heart truly goes out to you. I know it's been probably very difficult for everyone sort of fixing up their homes and getting back to some sort of normalcy. My family went through that as well, and I can empathize with you, and I truly hope that everyone is able to fix up their homes and get back to where they need to be as soon as possible. And I hope that as you rebuild that you might consider using sea turtle friendly lighting at your property so we can protect our homes, protect ourselves, and protect our turtles as well. If you do happen to see a sick or injured, distressed or disoriented turtle this year, we strongly encourage you to call either the FWC Wildlife Alert Hotline or the Clearwater Marine Aquarium Rescue Hotline, because they are your local marine turtle permit holders. We do strongly encourage you not to interact with that animal because they may be in distress and may be in need of further assistance. So putting them back in the water may not necessarily be the right move. So please call those hotlines and get assistance so we can get help for those turtles. And with that, I say thank you so much for listening, and I will take any questions that you have. That one shot up fast. Mm-hmm.
Is that with the impact of humans or without?
Without. Yeah. So that doesn't take into account things like disorientations, turtles lost due to impacts from cars, things like that. No, that we don't. I've not seen a research study that has taken into account all those different factors. It would be hard to do. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There is regional differences because there are a lot of places around the state do have local lighting ordinances, like Madeira Beach, for sea turtle lighting. So the way that is enforced really varies throughout the state. So the impacts of disorientations can be vary greatly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, here.
How many eggs do they leave?
For loggerhead, it can vary by species, of course, but for the loggerheads, it's usually somewhere between 80 and 120 per nest, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Here, Randy.
I didn't know if I'd be interested in, no. I didn't know if I'd be interested in turtles or not, but I came anyway. But it's very interesting, and it's also a lot of information you don't think about. So I think I used to know what the term was. How long are they nesting and hatching? I know it's approximate, but I don't remember what it was. So is there a timeline?
For how long the eggs incubate?
Yeah, are they here?
About 2 months. So the eggs incubate in a nest for about 2 months. The nesting season here in Pinellas County lasts from May 1st through October 31st officially. Sea turtles do not recognize time, so sometimes they start a little early or stay a little bit later, but that's generally the window.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you. I like this catch box. This is great.
Are there any attempts to artificially increase the amount that make it? You know, to make that instead of 1 out of 1,000, maybe get it down to 1 out of a few hundred or something?
That's a fair question. So we're lucky here in the state of Florida that we have a lot of volunteer agencies like the Clearwater Marine Aquarium and lots of other governmental non-NGOs around the state that donate their time to manage sea turtle nesting throughout the state. So they'll mark nests, they'll take data on them, they do a lot of work to see how well our nesting populations are doing. So they will do a lot of work to interface with their residents and their local commissions to see if there's anything that they can do to help, join the fight, if you will. And they do a lot of work to monitor nests, to protect them. I mean, Clearwater Marine Aquarium's out here, rain or shine. They were out here in the rain this morning to mark off nests, to make sure it's very clear to stay away from this area. They can do other sort of protective measures as guided by FWC. But we're really hoping to, it's really a village that needs to help. So it's not just these amazing teams that mark the nests and take care of the nests. It has to be the people who live here. It has to be the tourists who enjoy our beaches that participate in the process as well. And that can be difficult to do.
Question from, there. I was going to throw it.
How old is a turtle when she starts nesting, and how many years or to what age will she nest?
Ooh, first question is a little bit easier than the second one. For loggerhead sea turtles, it's usually somewhere, and this is a guesstimate because it's very hard to research turtles once they're off the beach because they're offshore animals. They're hard to locate. They're hard to capture. So our best guess is for loggerheads, they're usually somewhere between 25 and 35 years old. There's also no good way to age them, so it's very difficult to tell. But that's our best guess. When they start laying, they're 25 to 35 years old. We don't know how long they live. We just don't. It's just, again, they're hard to capture out in the wild. There's no way to sort of monitor them throughout their life. We're getting a little bit better in terms of technology. We can use satellite tags to monitor where they go and how they use the water. But satellite tags still fail after a certain period of time because they only have a certain amount of battery life in them. So we have to then go collect those tags and put another one on, and that's very hard to do because the turtles have to be clean and dry, and there's a whole process that I can get into on how to get those satellite tags on, but they only last for so long. So truly, we do not know how long they live.
One more. Here, catch.
You toss it. Doing the math, so that's like 7 or 8 nests, and only one will make it to adulthood. Like, even with all the measures that we're doing, and like the when they put the little things up around the nest, and we're guiding them and stuff, still only one in that many make it to
One in
adulthood.
1,000
That's
hatchlings
crazy.
will make it to adulthood. Yeah, and that again, that doesn't account for all the hatchlings we lose to disorientation, to predation, to all of those things. So
How many would you say actually come out of the hole? Like, okay, and substantial. Have you seen, like, is it half or is it like, do they
it
a lot?
really depends on the environmental conditions. So if a nest gets washed over by tidal events a lot, the nest can survive some of that, but if water sits in the bottom for too long, those eggs won't survive. If they get dug up and eaten by coyotes, that one's not going to do well. If it is laid in an area where the sand is very compact, the hatchlings can't get out. They can only do so much to crawl through that sand. So it really depends on the environmental conditions, how many survive. Ooh, nice catch.
How do they coordinate the timing of laying the eggs and how close to the beach they need to be?
So how do they time it when?
How close to the beach they need to be relative to the time of laying the eggs?
So they have to sort of, so are you talking about adults?
Yes,
Right, yeah.
when they lay the eggs, so it must be miles out, right? They must be miles out, and then obviously they have the eggs and say, oh, I'm going to have to lay these eggs. I better be close to the beach. So
How do they know? That's a good question. So they travel from their feeding grounds to the beach where they were actually born at. It's called their natal beach. So they have a way to navigate back there. We have some ideas on how that might be, some hematite in their brains and things like that. But they manage to navigate there, and they know based on water temperature. They don't have a calendar, so we think it's mostly water temperature, and they navigate back. And we don't know how they choose a specific nest site. We just know that they'll crawl up the beach. We think it might have something to do with temperature. It could be the composition of the sand, lots of different things. But there's still a lot, for as long as we've known and been studying turtles, there's a lot we still don't know, unfortunately. Did I get them all?
Thank you.
All right, thank you so
Lindsay.
much.
Thank you. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And we have Clearwater Marine Aquarium. Also, while she walks up, there's food back here in the back of the room. There's also a hot dog stand out front. Please help yourself. Hot dogs, you had some breakfast sandwiches, cold soda, colder water. Please help yourself. It's all part of the event. Free.
Or you can always.
Quick trivia. How old is Madeira Beach as a city? 78.
I don't see it. Maybe I'm blind.
3 years ago, the city celebrated its 75th anniversary. We just had our 78th back on May, first Saturday in May.
Thank you so much.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla Sitton, and I'm the Senior Biologist and Intern Coordinator at Clearwater Marine Aquarium. I'm part of the Sea Turtle Conservation Program, so we do the nesting surveys out on the beach. If you've ever seen any ATVs out there, that's us. I just want to say thank you all for coming today, and thank you all for inviting us and having the aquarium involved. So Lindsay did an incredible job in her presentation, so I'm going to speed through some of the things that I have in this presentation. I was going to talk about the species that we have that nest here in Florida, specifically in Pinellas County, kind of go into the nesting process, and then talk about our role as the Sea Turtle Conservation Program, and then give you guys some annual summary reports of our numbers last year. All right. So as Lindsay mentioned, we have the loggerhead and the green sea turtle that nest here in Florida. The loggerhead is very common to nest here in Pinellas County. I'd say that accounts for probably 98% of our activities. And then we do get the occasional green sea turtle, probably 1 to 2, possibly 3 activities a year from the green sea turtles. Species that are more rare to nest in Pinellas County are the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle and the leatherback sea turtle. So this year we did not have a Kemp's Ridley nest so far in our patrol area, but we did hear from the park rangers up in the Honeymoon State Park Island that they did get a Kemp's Ridley nest recently, so that's very exciting. And last year we had a leatherback nest in Indian Rocks Beach, and that was the first one to be documented in Pinellas County, so that was incredibly exciting. And it did end up hatching, and it was a successful nest. Lindsay did a great job with the nesting process, so I'm going to go quickly through this. But as the Sea Turtle Conservation Program, we are looking out on the beach for false crawls and nests. So when the sea turtle comes up on the beach and does not lay her eggs, that's what we call a false crawl or false emergence. And that can happen for a couple of reasons. So perhaps she saw bright lights, as Lindsay mentioned, or maybe there were people still out on the beach hanging out and she saw them and she got spooked off by them. Another reason could be that the sand just did not feel right to her. If the sand is too wet or too compact, they don't like that as much as a softer, fluffy sand that they feel they can properly dig in. So she might turn around without laying those eggs. We do still document these activities, however. And then the other type of activity is a nest. When the female sea turtle comes up on the beach, if she's not scared off by those other reasons that we just talked about, she will continue through her nesting process, which it takes a range of time, but a good average is about 2 hours for the entire nesting process. And she will lay, like Lindsay said, 80 to 120 eggs and use those front flippers after she lays her eggs to camouflage the nest. So as you can see in these photos, they might not look like much, but that area that is mounded and kind of fluffy, that's how we know that it's a nest. So we drive along the beach looking for those crawl tracks, and then we will look and see whether we think she laid her eggs or not. Hatchlings. So the eggs will incubate for an average of 2 months, but it can be anywhere from 40 to 80 days, depending on a lot of things with the weather and temperature and how many times the nest was washed over and a lot of different factors. As Lindsay mentioned, the hatchlings will typically emerge at night when they can feel that temperature change. When the sun sets and the sand cools, that's their cue to leave the nest. And they will hopefully follow the celestial light reflecting on the water and crawl out to the water to orient themselves instead of disorienting and crawling towards that artificial lighting. And then they'll enter their swim frenzy and go to that sargassum seaweed line. And then once the female sea turtles reach sexual maturity, they will return to their natal beaches. And some research shows that they could be using the Earth's magnetic field to navigate back. Our role on the beach is, like I mentioned, to document these activities. So when we're driving around on our ATVs, we're not just going out for a joyride. However, it is quite fun. We are looking for the crawls from these sea turtles. So when we see a crawl, we will stop and walk the activity and determine whether it's a nest or a false crawl. And then depending on that, we will take measurements of the activity. GPS coordinates will measure the track width as well, so we can get a size estimate on the females that are nesting on our beaches. And that's always interesting to see because sometimes sea turtles will come up multiple times in a night. So if you have a bunch of false crawls in the same area and you're measuring the track width, you can kind of tell if it's a similar size, and you might be able to estimate that it was potentially the same turtle coming up over and over again trying to nest. And measuring the track width also helps us kind of estimate age as well, because size and age do sort of correlate. So if we have a very small sea turtle, we might know, oh, this might be her first time nesting, or if we have a larger female, then we know she might be an old pro. Along with identifying the false crawls in the nests, we also monitor all of our existing nests for signs of water damage, predation, vandalisms, and hatches. And then we will respond to all of those events accordingly. In this area, since we are so highly populated and we're a big tourist area, we do get quite a few vandalisms, unfortunately. So we do have people that get inside of our nest barriers. You might see those and think it's obvious. Some people don't, and they go right in. And we will report those instances to FWC if we see any type of digging inside of our nest, or if people place objects inside of our nests, anything like that that could potentially damage the egg chamber. After a nest hatches, we will also perform an inventory. So we'll excavate that nest. And as you can see in that photo, that is what is happening. We're taking out all of the nest contents and counting the hatched shells versus unhatched, counting the damaged eggs, counting any live hatchlings in the nest or dead hatchlings. And that helps us get an idea of that nest's rate of success. So we have hatch success and emergence success. Another part of our duties are documenting obstructed nesting attempts and disorientations. So an obstructed nesting attempt, or an ONA, is when an adult sea turtle comes up onto the beach and she interacts with some kind of man-made object. Like Lindsay mentioned, this could be a beach chair or any type of toys or furniture that's left on the beach. Another very common one is a seawall. So if there's a seawall on the beach, sometimes our turtles will go way up the dune or way towards the dune, and they will actually end up interacting with that seawall as they're crawling on the beach. When these events happen, it is unfortunate because it can hinder them from nesting if they're interacting with these objects that they normally wouldn't encounter on a beach. So we take extra measurements when these happen, and we write up reports and send those out to FWC, the county, and the municipality that they happened in, so everybody is aware of the objects that are on our beach affecting our sea turtles. We also respond to adult and hatchling disorientations. When those occur, we also take extra measurements and get extra details for those reports and send them out to all of those same municipalities. And in this top right corner, you can see a nest right there that actually hatched and disoriented. I don't know if you can see all those little lines. All of those are hatching tracks. So instead of going straight towards the water, you can see that they are going every which way. And when that occurs, we will stop our patrol, and sometimes they take a very long time to work up, but we will actually go and look for all of those hatchlings. We will follow any track that we see. We'll follow them into the dune. We'll follow them towards the road. I've recovered hatchlings from pools, hot tubs, storm drains, the road, the parking lot. I'm sure Lindsay has done the same. A lot of times we do find live ones, which is always encouraging. We do also find dead ones when this happens, unfortunately. Like Lindsay mentioned, they can get run over by cars, or while they're out on the beach crawling for an extended period of time, it gives them more opportunity to be affected by predators. Some of our most common ones here in Pinellas County are raccoons and coyotes, ghost crabs, and fire ants, actually. So if the nest disorients and those hatchlings are crawling around in the dune for a long time, fire ants will start to find them and swarm them. And we always do our best to recover as many hatchlings as we can. So that is a big part of our job come July, August, and September. All right. So last year we had a doozy of a hurricane season. And to kick that off, we had Hurricane Debbie. So this is a nest in Indian Shores, I believe, before Hurricane Debbie. You can see there's a dune system behind it. There are plants back there, and the nest is at the base of that dune. And after Hurricane Debbie, you can see that the entire profile of the beach has changed. That dune has been pushed back multiple feet, and you can see the smooth sand right in front of the nest where the tide has come up very high. We had 117 nests that were unfortunately washed out by Hurricane Debbie. The tide came up too high, and a lot of those eggs were lost to the hurricane. We were lucky to see about 19 hatches after Debbie and before Helene, so we did get a few nests that were high enough in the dune or far enough back on the beach that they weren't affected negatively by Debbie, and they did get to end up hatching, so that was encouraging to see. And then unfortunately, we did have Helene come through and bring a much higher storm surge. So this is one of our nests on Clearwater Beach before Helene, and then afterwards it was just absolutely destroyed. We had to go, after the hurricane, go check on all of our nests that were still out on the beach in between those two. We did only have 9 before the storm, and it did take out the rest of those, obviously. And As Lindsay said, my heart goes out to everybody that was affected negatively by Helene. It was very devastating to drive around the day after the storm and see all of the damage out there. And after Helene, we unfortunately did not observe any more hatches. And then a few days later, Hurricane Milton decided to come through, and we did not have any nests before Milton, and then none were laid after. And FWC actually ended up canceling our season early after Milton, just due to all of the damages out on the beach, and we weren't getting any new activity at this point in the season. So we did end on October 13th last year, but normally we will patrol all the way until Halloween, and the 31st of October will be our last day of patrols out there. And for our summary reports last year, we had a nice even 600 total activities. We had 269 loggerhead nests, 329 false crawls. So we like to see that number be more even, kind of a 1-to-1 ratio. But like I mentioned, since we have such bright artificial lighting in this area, and we are highly populated with a lot of people hanging out on the beach at night, we do tend to see it skew towards a higher rate of false crawls in our area versus nests. And then we did have 2 green nests last year and 1 leatherback nest. And our green nests were very special because myself and the manager of our program, Carly Oakley, I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with her, we both got to see the greens nesting because they came out and they were daytime nesters. So they were still finishing up their nesting process when we were out there patrolling in the morning. And of these activities, 63 of them were obstructed nesting attempts. So there were 63 turtles that interacted with some kind of man-made object while they were out there on the beach. And we had 100 marine turtle disorientations, unfortunately. 48 of those were adults, and 52 of those events were hatchling related. And these are your Madeira-specific numbers. You had a total of 42 activities, 26 loggerhead nests, and 16 loggerhead false crawls. Unfortunately, the greens and the leatherback did not nest in this area. They were in other municipalities. And there were only 3 obstructed nesting attempts in this area, so that's better. And there were 13 marine turtle disorientations, with 6 of those being from adults and 7 being from hatchlings. Oh, sorry, one more thing. After all of the doom and gloom of the hurricane news of last year, we are seeing a very high number of nests and false crawls this year. So compared to previous years, compared to one of our highest years on record, actually, we are even higher than that year. So we're very excited. Our turtles are back and they're still here to nest. So it's very encouraging to see. And now I would like to answer any questions y'all might have. Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned the false crawls.
Yes.
Do you know for how long a female turtle can hold the eggs without there being some kind of consequence?
That is a great question. I do not know exactly how long she can hold them, but I do know if at a certain point she's not able to lay her eggs, she will just deposit them in the water. Lindsay, do you know at the exact time?
They will attempt to come back on the nest on the beach either later that night or in subsequent nights, 2 to 3 nights probably, in an attempt to deposit those eggs, probably after that.
Which we obviously don't want. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you guys for your time.
Who's going to talk first? All right, we'll just move on with the next portion of the expo, which is hurricane prep. What? Oh, excuse me, sorry, hold on. Deputy Snyder has a few words.
Good morning, everybody. Deputy Snyder, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I'm one of the community policing deputies that is permanently assigned to the city of Madeira Beach. I have a partner, Alex Siam, that also works with me. We cover 6 days a week, and then you have patrol out there as well. Dealing with the turtle season, one of our jobs is to issue or post every property that's on the beach and within the corridor with the upcoming turtle season, which starts May 1. We craft the letter, we get the updated code, and then physically post every condo and building. A lot of them are out of commission right now, so we did some outside postings because they're vacant. The residential properties as well, and some of the ones on the east side of Gulf Boulevard that still could have some lighting issues that may affect the turtles on the beach. So our beach is open 24/7. It doesn't close unless there's some sort of executive order or COVID or something like that. But even then, we are still open, which means that we have people out on the beach at all hours. So with that, we have to patrol the beach at all hours. And while we're patrolling, we look for stuff for people, dogs, not allowed. People can be out there. You can fish all night long. Dogs, unless it's a service animal, is not allowed on the beach. The dog has to be on a leash unless your disability prevents you from handling that animal. But that's very rare. I've seen it once. The other things we look for are obstructions that are left on the beach. We have the ability to enforce the city code ordinances, such as holes, unattended property, abandoned property. We will tag that stuff. If it remains there, we will be in contact with Public Works, and we'll have that property removed, impounded the property. And it will cost you, if it's not disposed, it'll cost you to get it back. We assist with the lighting issues with the Marine Aquarium, and if we get the disorientation reports, we just had a couple this week with the crawls, false crawl, is that? So yeah. So they come up and they don't nest and they go back out and they try to figure out why. They send us that information also because we can try to look at the lights and figure out what's going on. Our beachfront is kind of a mess still because what walls we had in garages are gone. So now what were shielded last year are not shielded this year. So it's created a few new issues with lighting. Before they were good because you couldn't see some of the lighting from the beach, and now you can because large sections of the building are gone. So that's one of the things we do on a daily basis. We will patrol the beach starting at night. Patrol deputies will check at night. We come in at anywhere from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark, and we will check the beach for this kind of stuff, tag it, mark it, remove it. We also have Public Works that will go down the beach to survey. We've got some construction projects out there, and then sanitation will also be out there as well. So that's just some of the responsibilities that we have on the beach and how it pertains to the turtles. And once you see those tracks, you never forget them. So, and then at night too, you're not supposed to use your lights. It's, you know, you say, well, deputy, you're driving a car down the beach with your lights on. I know we try to be very careful and avoid any of the soft sand. We stay very low on the beach near the water line. That's typically not where, in my experience, where they will lay their nests. But, and the other thing is during the day, about 5 years ago, we had a turtle that came up in the middle of the day and laid a nest in front of the shoreline. And it was a media spectacle. Everybody came out, so we actually had to go out there for crowd control to keep people back to not disrupt the turtle. So it was an amazing thing to see. And then at nighttime, they'll hatch and nobody's around, and somebody will find one. They contact us, we contact them, and then try to not disturb it as much as possible so they can collect it and rehab it and release it. So those are just some of the things that we do out here on the beach. Anybody have any questions for me? Okay. No, it would be, no, we wouldn't arrest them. We would issue them a letter that their lights are in violation by city code. We would send them a letter. The letter would have a compliance period, which would be typically 10 days. If they fail to do that, we could issue them a second letter which says, okay, if you don't come to compliance, we can take you to the special magistrate. Part of the thing is we'd have to be able to say exactly what the issue was. If we don't have any meters currently, there's some discussion about getting a light meter so we can pinpoint the exact wavelength that light is emitting. That would be better evidence if we took it to the special magistrate, which is where we would take it to the special magistrate here at the city hall, and then either they find them in violation, give them a certain time period to get corrections, and the final thing is you could have a lien put on your property. If your property is in violation of a code violation or building violation, the city can put liens on your property. And until you come into compliance, the liens could accumulate. Yes, sir.
Have you ever witnessed any vandalism or signs of vandalism around the beach?
During the daytime, the biggest thing is parents not supervising their kids and the kids running around or through the nest because they're marked. They're staked out and they're marked with tape and their numbering system. But that's more of an issue with just young people. But I don't recall any deliberate destruction of a nest in my time here in the city. Thank you, everybody.
All right, next is Megan Wepford from Public Works.
The only thing that really hasn't been mentioned is we own a beach rake. You all have probably seen it. It's orange. It's behind a big orange tractor. We operate that Monday through Friday. We do have to wait for Turtle Patrol to finish. And once that's completed, we rake the whole beach. But the only parts of the beach that we do rake completely are our public beaches. Our Archibald Park, Johns Pass Park, Tom and Kitty Stewart Park, and the county park. Other than that, we just run the rec line, basically where the seaweed line is, and then typically we'll do 2 passes. So we have a lot of people call and ask, why don't we rake the whole beach?
I don't know if we shared with you did you want to say something?
Oh, Robin
insurance
has
related? I know you love to talk about
Robin
insurance.
has
Yeah, they'll be here. Once we finish here in a few minutes, we'll bring you.
That's funny.
about
Other than that, the only other thing that we do, we fill in the holes. There was this TikTok hole thing challenge a few years ago that they filled holes that are like they're digging to another country. So other than that, I think everything else has been covered. Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think most everything's been covered, but we do have wildlife-friendly lights out at the community development table out there. They're free, so please pick them up. Just like what Lindsay was saying, they also need to be shielded, but those are the lights, so it might get you started. And if you don't pick them up now, or if you know somebody who's on the beach or around Gulf Boulevard, send them up here to City Hall. We always have them available.
And during the permitting process, we do look to make sure that the new builds do acknowledge the turtle-friendly lighting. So we do look for that during the permitting process.
And the glass as well. So the glass has to have that 45% transmittance. So we do look at that when we get building permits in and with the inspection process too. I think that's it.
And as everybody just heard a few minutes ago, we have Jim Everett to talk about all things insurance. This does have a good, I think this works all the way down at the end of the street. Right? Thank you, Jim.
Sure. I'll just step up here so you guys can hear me. Sorry. So my name is
Jim, use the microphone.
Use the mic. Oh, mic. Oh, at the podium. This is getting way too fancy for me. Good morning. Afternoon. Is it still morning? Still morning, barely. Again, I'm Jim Everett. My family owns Everett Financial Group, which is an insurance agency right here in Madeira Beach. So our office is on 150th. It's a 2-story light blue building, kind of right behind the 7-Eleven there on 150th. We have, or should I say had, a home in Reddington Shores that's now a vacant lot. So I can certainly understand where a lot of you folks are. We're actually people too, insurance people. Just didn't know if you knew that. But so we have to build a new home as well because our home had 42 inches of water in it. So I wanted to just give you a couple of pointers because guess what? It's almost June 1st, which means we're going into another hurricane season, which unfortunately NOAA is projecting another active storm season. So what do I do before a storm? So obviously I'm going to talk about insurance because that's what I do, but it's a good time now. If you didn't learn what insurance does over the past 6 months or doesn't do, then you missed your learning opportunity. But now's the opportunity to correct those things that did not happen for you with your current insurance, or if you didn't have insurance at all, which I know a lot of people didn't because my house had never had water before, and my house was built in 1955, and guess what? My house had 4 feet of water. So it happens. So this is a good time to review your insurance, look at your coverages, look at your deductibles. You should have, I know more about flood insurance now than I ever wanted to know ever in my life. But it educated me a lot, and I'm an agent, so I know a lot of other people were surprised by some things that happened with their insurance. Like, there's no loss of use on a FEMA flood policy. So if you're displaced by flood, your FEMA flood insurance policy provides nothing for housing. Your homeowner's policy does, or it can, but a FEMA flood policy does not, will not, never will. So you need to plan for that. There are other types of insurance policies. One's called a parametric policy that's based on metrics. So if you have certain wind speeds at your home, it'll pay you certain amounts of money. So there's some creative new things that have happened in the world of insurance to help supplement higher deductibles or maybe the inability to have loss of use on a policy. If you don't have a flood insurance policy now, you've got a 30-day wait on a FEMA policy. So if you're thinking about buying it, might want to do it sooner than later. The other thing that I tell people, and I actually wrote this before I met the gentleman outside that's doing has a home documenting service. But I always tell people to go through your home and take extensive pictures of every room, because as well as you think you know what you have, you're going to forget stuff. And if you're going to try to do a reappraisal, like a pre-storm appraisal, which some people have tried to do to help them with the 50% rule, the kind of documentation that company does is helpful. I was lucky. I'd actually listed my house for sale about 6 months before the storm. I didn't sell it, unfortunately. But I had a lot of pictures from the listing. So I just lucked out, and I had that. So that helped us. The other thing is you need to let us know when you make changes to your house. People will go in and do these fantastic improvements to their homes. They don't tell us, and they're way underinsured. So when you do major things to your home, I put on a new roof. I can shop new carriers if you have a new roof. So when you do things like that, you need to let your insurance agent know those kinds of things. Okay, after a storm, what to do? Let's hope we don't have to do this for a really super long time. I hope I'm dead when we have the next storm. But obviously take pictures of everything. One thing that I learned is you can actually go on, if you're an Amazon Prime user, you can go onto Amazon Prime, and there's an area in Prime where you can request a download of all your purchases, and they will email you an Excel spreadsheet with all of your purchases on it. I use that with my flood insurance adjuster for personal items, because personal items is the hard part of a flood insurance claim. The building's not the hard part. The adjuster's going to go around and determine what's wrong structurally, and it's all based on water height. If the water gets to your windows, all new windows. If the water touches your doors, all new doors. I mean, that's just how it works. If the water doesn't get to the windows, don't get new windows. So building's fairly straightforward. My estimate was 42 pages long just for the building, so it's very detailed. But for the contents, they give you a spreadsheet and say, you gotta tell me what you got. I don't know what you have. And so my wife is like, are you kidding me? And I go, well, what are you doing today that's worth $70,000 to us? Because that's how much coverage we had for contents. So what you got going on today is worth 70 grand. This is what we got going on that's worth 70 grand. So God bless her. She took 3 days and went through everything. The Amazon list was helpful. You can take pictures of everything, and you can take them in groups if you want to. I sent probably 500 pictures to the adjuster. I sent the Amazon list because we bought our house in 2020. So I just told Amazon I did all my purchases from May of 2020 till now. And so I could go through and kind of pick out what we had purchased for the home, which helped us from a valuation standpoint. You didn't hear me say this, but if you probably want to be close to 100% above whatever you've got. So if you have 70,000 in coverage, you probably want to be putting in about 100 to 120,000 in claim, because it's depreciated. So contents on a FEMA flood policy are depreciated. you can't get replacement costs like you can on a homeowner policy. It's not an option. So I had a lot of frustrated clients with that. But why didn't you insure me with replacement costs? Because I can't. It's not an option on a FEMA plan. There are some private carriers that will do that, but private carriers out here on the barrier islands are few and far between. It's hard to find them to take the risk. And if they do, they're usually pretty expensive. The other thing to think about is the claims adjusters. So most of these folks are flown in from all over the country. I wish we could do this with building permit technicians and inspectors, but we fly them in from all over the country to try to adjust the claim as quickly as possible. I've never met one that hasn't been doing it for a fairly long time. They've all got at least 200 plus claims that they're working, at least, at a minimum. So I had some clients that got frustrated because they didn't have something back in a week. And I said, well, you're not going to get it back in the week. So their strategy was to call the claims adjuster every day. Well, they just kept going like this in the pile because claims adjusters are people, right? So think about if you're doing it and you've got 200 people you're trying to figure out and somebody's calling you every day, yeah, I'm getting right to that, right? So just kind of think about that. I know it's frustrating and it's difficult, but you're dealing with people. So I always found that, I offered the claims adjuster, hey, if you need an office, you're welcome to come use mine. We have internet, we have a computer, we have a printer, just to try to be hospitable to keep them in the community so they could do more claims. But the squeaky wheel strategy is not always the best in every case. So I caution you with that, with an adjuster. The other thing is use your agent. I mean, I had clients, I was amazed at people that were not clients. I would be talking to them, they'd be talking to me about their claim, and they were telling me all the stuff they were frustrated with. And I said, well, have you talked to your agent? And they looked at me like I had three heads, and they go, well, I never thought about that. I won't. Well, that's the person that got paid for selling you your insurance policy, so it's okay to call them and ask questions and say, hey, I don't think this claim's going right. I mean, I escalated claims for, probably at least a dozen clients or more, and got them heard just because I got it to the top of the pile, right? So your agent can get it to the top of the pile. Calling the adjuster every day probably gets you to the bottom of the pile. So that's what your agent's for, to help you with that. Now, if you call me every day, I'm going to do the same thing that the claims adjuster does. You're going to go back to the bottom of the pile because, you're not being reasonable. So just some things to keep in mind. The other thing, during Hurricane Irma, I was dealing with a client who was very upset because he hadn't gotten his claim check yet, and he'd had some pretty severe damage to his home. So he kept calling my office about the claim, calling the office. So finally he called in, I heard the agent trying to do it, and I immediately recognized who it was. So I said, well, let me talk to him. So I talked to him, and I said, can I just, and man, he's going on and on and on. So can I just ask you one question? He said, sure. I said, have you lined up a contractor to do the work once you do get the check? And he said, because he needed roof work, and he dead silence on the other end of the phone. He goes, well, no, I was going to wait till I got my check. I go, well, I'm telling you right now, you're a year out on a roof, dude. So I'll tell you what, I'll make you this wager. I'll get you your check way before you get a contractor to do your roof. So just some things to think about. Sometimes we get so focused on something that we're not thinking about the entire process. Well, how many people do you think needed roofs after Irma? A lot of people needed roofs after Irma. So if you're not getting in line with the contractor, just a strategy to use for claims. So hopefully some of that's been helpful, just some lessons in claims, that I've learned. And any questions, I actually have my little cheat sheet of that stuff here on paper. I'm happy to leave that for you guys to pick up if you care to, or you can make paper airplanes out of them or whatever you want. But any questions that I can help anybody with? Hi.
Hi. What's a reasonable amount of time to be waiting for your supplement? And/or the adjuster commented that he wasn't sure how they were going to do it, if they were going to require you to do the work first and then submit a receipt, which in Helene, it could put you way over. So I'm just wondering if you've heard it going like that. I don't have
Are
a
you
supplement back, so I have no clue.
Are you
how
talking
they're
on
gonna do
a
it.
flood claim? Or you,
On a flood
okay.
claim.
So you got an initial payout, and now you're waiting for a supplemental payout?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a lot of those. Most of mine we had to pay the whole thing out because of the amount of damage. But they're waiting on an estimate for you to qualify the supplemental refund for you?
No, they didn't notice we were a wooden house or didn't notice a hurricane window. There's a lot of stuff that they missed, and I sent them everything very organized. So I'm just waiting for that. I'm just wondering when I should start stomping.
Have you talked to your agent?
In my previous experience, I've found that they don't know a lot.
Wrong agent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're paying them for. So, I mean, that's frustrating. I apologize for that. You can call me. I'll try to help you with it. I mean, I can't do a lot because I'm not the agent of record, but I'll try to look at it and give you a recommendation on what I would do. Wow, that's amazing. I mean, normally these guys are pretty good going through on the building, but, you're going to have, you got the lucky one, I guess, right? Unfortunately.
Well, I mean, he's been helpful, but I know he got way behind, then he was sick for 6 weeks. So he's been helpful to me. It's just taken a while, and so we're just sitting, waiting.
Well, if he got sick, I mean, I had some clients that I got reassigned to different adjusters because for whatever reason, maybe there wasn't a personality compatibility, which happens occasionally. Or if they were out and not available, they should have managed you to another resource. Because there's a lot of claims adjusters. I mean, they got big caseloads, but they can get through them. I mean, if you've seen these reports that they do,
multiple times.
it's unbelievable how detailed they are. But they have to be, or FEMA won't pay. So, but if I can help you, I'll try to.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Or any other questions? Jim will be
Come on,
around.
no more fun about insurance? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jim. So continuing under hurricane preparation, we have meteorologist Colleen Campbell, Tampa Bay's 10. Thank you, Colleen, for attending.
All right, let me get my little cheat sheet up here. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody coming out today. I'm Colleen Campbell with 10 Tampa Bay. I also have Allie here with ABC, and yes, we do get along as meteorologists, different stations. Everybody always asks that. But, and I want to thank the city for allowing me to come out today, inviting me out, and all of you for being interested in the weather. We love talking about weather, right? So, and yeah, June 1st is tomorrow, so here we go again. Hopefully, it'll be a little bit kinder to us this year, but all right. Get this up. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about preparing for hurricane season. I think whether you just moved here or you've been living here all your life, or you're somebody that works with hurricanes, I think we all probably learned something last year. Last year was just unusual, and we're going to talk about what the new normal is. And yeah, hopefully we don't see another year like that, but let's recap. So, can I actually use this? Yeah. Check. Is this working? Hello? Okay. All right, so recapping 2024, we had NOAA put out their outlook, and I love hearing all the comments, and not saying anybody in this room makes those comments, but on the internet sometimes you get some warriors that are out there and they're saying, every year NOAA says that it's going to be an above average year, right? Every year they say that we're going to have more storms than average. Well, guess what? We're talking about the new normal. And last year, NOAA, they actually nailed it. I put that little icon there, nailed it, because they had 17 to 25 named storms, 18 to 13 hurricanes, and 4 to 7 major. Now, they do a seasonal outlook early in the year, or early in the season, I should say. They just came out with theirs recently for 2025. But they also do an update as we get into hurricane season. And their update last year, they actually knocked it down 17 to 24 named storms. For the recap, this is how many storms we actually had. Of course, we have all our lists up here. We got as far as Sarah. We did not have Tony, Valerie, or William. But we had 18 named storms, 11 hurricanes, and 5 major hurricanes, and 3 of those making landfall in Florida. I'm sure you know the 3 names. We're not going to talk about them. We're just going to move forward, right? All right, so 2025, we have the outlook, and once again, it's above average. Now, it doesn't look like it's going to be as active as last year, but remember this, it only takes one storm, right? So Hurricane Andrew, we like talking about that as a good example because that year in 1992, it wasn't as active, but Hurricane Andrew, if you remember, was one of the storms that changed the building codes for Florida. So here we are for the 2025 outlook. We have NOAA, Colorado State, North Carolina State, and then the average. And again, another favorite comment, you always get all kinds of like things that people say, and you're just like, huh. But one of the things people often say, Colorado State. Why is Colorado State making an outlook for hurricanes? They're out in the Rockies. You know, what do they care? Well, they're actually one of the first organizations to do one of these outlooks. So they've been doing it for a very long time, and they're pretty on the money too. But of course, the one that everybody knows of is NOAA. So this year, NOAA is predicting 13 to 19 named storms. They always do a range, 6 out of 10 being hurricanes, and then 3 to 5 being major hurricanes. And you can see the other numbers here, Colorado State, North Carolina State, and then on average, so again, the new normal, 14 named storms, how many we usually have, 7 hurricanes and 3 major hurricanes. Now, what this does not mean is that all these storms, say we do have 14 named storms, and that's just the average number. All of these storms, that doesn't mean that we're going to get landfall in Florida. But again, that also means that it only takes one. So again, I don't want anybody to look at these numbers and say, oh, it's another above average season. You know, there's certain factors that the reason why we're seeing above average season, and those factors I have listed there. We have the weaker wind shear, the warm sea surface temperatures, that's a major one. And then we have the active West African monsoon. Well, what the heck is that? Well, we have all this moisture that's coming off the coast of Africa. We have these seedlings that basically bubble up off the coast, and that produces our storms. So that's where we typically look for these storms to form. And then we also have our ENSO neutral phase that we're going to be in for the rest of the season. So we had this transition from La Nina to ENSO neutral. What we want would be an El Nino phase, and I could sit up here all day and bore you guys about La Nina and El Nino and the difference in the Pacific and the Atlantic and how it all ties together. But just be aware that there's certain factors to why we're seeing an above average season lately. So, but again, it only takes one storm, and what we want you guys to do is start getting ready now. So part of that, step 1, is knowing your zone, alternate routes. What we saw last year was, with Helene especially, I know we were talking about that earlier, a lot of people waited to evacuate. Now, Helene was a powerful storm because the way that Helene was, it just rode along the coast the entire way. So all the wind was kind of coming in and just splashing against the coast and bringing in all that storm surge as Helene rode up and then eventually made landfall over by the Big Bend region. With Milton, it kind of just buzzsaws right across, and then, of course, the worst of the damage, we say it was a windstorm, but there was significant damage in Siesta Key, where it made landfall, and all those areas south. So again, when they tell you evacuate, our wonderful city officials here, make sure you're listening, and make sure you have an alternate route. That's another thing I was going to get into. So we had a incident, I believe it was with Helene, that somebody unfortunately was evacuating and a roadside sign came down and unfortunately struck their vehicle and they wound up dying. So there's a lot of hazards out there. It's not just storm surge. Don't wait until you see the water coming up to get moving. You want to get moving ahead of time and kind of get ahead of the storm. Also, pack your kit, water, medication, pet items, chargers, batteries, anything that you can think of. You want to make sure you have that kit right now. Guess what? There's no lines at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you go, your hardware store. There's no lines today. So when you're done this, maybe see what your kit is and get that all together. And then have a plan. Make sure you're communicating that plan with your neighbors, with your friends, with your family, people that don't even live in Florida, so they know what you're up to. There was a lot of miscommunication last year. There was people that couldn't get in touch with their loved ones for obvious reasons. So make sure you have a plan and everybody's aware of that plan and have a backup plan to that plan. So yeah, that's that. When it comes to evacuating, you don't have to travel far. You just need an alternate route away from the water. And again, make sure you have a plan for your pets. If you have anybody that's special needs, I have a niece that's special needs. She's in New Jersey, but I often think about, man, if she was here, like, what would we do? She's nonverbal. The shelter that you're going to, are they going to accommodate to your needs? I have an aunt that's, getting up there in age and she can no longer walk as far, or if we go to a shelter, is she going to be able to, be accommodated at that shelter? So these are all things you got to think about. A lot of those special needs shelters you have to pre-register for, so make sure you're doing that right now. And then, again, leave when ordered to do so. All right, so we have a fun, getting a little preview here, a fun video. So we have a hurricane special that's coming up this Sunday. It airs on 10 Tampa Bay on our streaming devices, and then it will air on broadcast later on. But we worked with Madeira Beach Fire Department and our fire chief, Clint, that's invited me out here today. And this is going to be his little segment that he didn't get to see this yet either, but we did this interview a couple weeks ago. This is part of the hurricane special. So all of you sitting in this room, you're getting a first look at one small segment. We all covered a number of topics. We got to pick which topics we wanted to cover. And I chose EV safety because, my neighbor next door has a Tesla, and I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous. After seeing Helene and all the storm surge, and I was thinking about that electric vehicle in the garage when I was evacuated. I'm like, man, I hope they move that to higher ground. So this is about EV danger. It's not just about cars. It's about golf carts, any vehicle that uses that ion battery. So hopefully this has sound, but because I'm doing this on Canva, but here it goes. What you're seeing right now is video. Oops, sorry. We'll try that again. What you're seeing. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a millennial, but you want to know it because I don't know how to do any of this stuff. All right. Okay. Now we're cooking. I was trying to turn it up. What you're seeing right now is video from Pinellas County showing an electric vehicle bursting into flames, all from the result of Hurricane Helene's storm surge, which took over coastal communities. Salt water can trigger a thermal runaway, a reaction inside an EV's lithium-ion battery.
Due to a faulty charging system or water intrusion, which causes a short circuit, and then it's really uncontrolled at that point.
This can cause fires that ignite suddenly and burn hotter and longer than gasoline fires.
You have to really dilute it with tens of thousands of gallons of water. And that's a lot of manpower right there. B, that's a lot of water. And C, it's time consuming on scene to be there for many hours for one vehicle fire, which we could have that situation mitigated on a normal vehicle within 30 minutes and back ready to run the next call.
Fire departments across the Gulf Coast, like here in Madeira Beach, are taking lessons they've learned from past storms and applying them to future electric vehicle fires. They're using tools like emergency plugs that prevent the car from being operated, and these fire blankets to help monitor and put out the flames. But there's only one foolproof way to avoid these dangerous fires altogether.
A lot of people, especially long-term Floridians, the last thing they want to do is evacuate. I mean, that's the best thing for you to do. And if you are going to evacuate and leave an electric vehicle, try to put it in a higher area.
And whether it's a car, golf cart, or e-bike, never drive an EV through flood water. If your EV is submerged, do not try to start or charge it. Keeping your car safe means knowing the hidden dangers lurking after the storm. All right, so yeah, that video that you see at the beginning there, that is actually from Pinellas County, from an EV that exploded inside a garage. So thank you, Clint, and the fire department for doing that story with us. And I hope you watch our segment coming up this weekend. There's a lot of great information, and we're here for you guys. So if you ever have any questions, believe me, I can talk about weather all day. But of course, I want to put anybody's mind at ease as well. And yeah, like I said, no matter if you've been living here all your life or you just moved here or you've been working with this type of weather or you're working in insurance, I think we all learned something last year. Whatever that lesson may be, it's probably tailored to you and, you know, your experience. But all right, so the EV thing that goes into evacuation, you have to consider, where am I going to put my car when I'm, you know, hitting the highway? So going into what you should have, I'm pretty sure many of you know about this already, but in case anybody doesn't, food and water, you want at least 1 gallon per day per person, non-perishable food, something that's easy to prepare. You want something 3 days supply for evacuation at least, and then a 2-week supply for home. And then first aid, that's something to think about. Sanitation, personal hygiene, water for flushing the toilets. I know there was a lot of things going around on Facebook last year, like different hacks, fill up the bathtub, whatever, you know, put things in the freezer. So tech and tools, you know, you want a hand crank radio. Those are great. I actually have one myself. Got it when I was living in Texas. Let me tell you, Texas was, you talk about severe storms. It's different type of storms, but those hand crank radios are awesome because they go off of solar power, or you can just crank it up. So you don't have to worry about batteries or anything like that. But a battery radio works fine too. Just make sure that you have extra batteries. And then a multi-purpose tool. You know, any Boy Scouts out there, make sure you have your tools from that. And then general, you need gas. Cash for your car. I know gas was a big thing last year. I was just amazed at the lines and, you know, not so much for Helene, but for Milton, the lines were just incredible for days, you know, couldn't get gas. Sleeping bags, clothing, rain gear, and things for the kids. Something that we also came across last year, a lot of these kids in shelters, with their parents or their grandparents or wherever it may be, they, you know, are in this space with strangers. They, you know, don't know what's going on, and it's scary. So, you know, try to find something to preoccupy them and put them at ease and, you know, make it as good of an experience as it can be, I guess. So, yeah, because the kids, we got a lot of messages where the kids were frightened. All right, understanding watches and warnings. So there was a little update that the National Weather Service did make this year. The potential tropical cyclone, you're going to hear that a lot. It's called a PTC. So that's new where, not the PTC, that came out in 2017, but basically when we have a cyclone that's starting to form, but it doesn't really quite have the characteristics where it can be a named system yet, they'll name it as a potential tropical cyclone. So that's kind of the step ahead of it being named a tropical storm or a tropical system. So the new thing is that they're doing this 72 hours out instead of 48 hours out. So that gives everybody a little bit more leeway and a little bit more of a heads up where you see that PTC form. And then we're likely going to get a named storm after that. But the name will be potential tropical cyclone 12 or, you know, and then we'll get a name after that. But generally, the watches and warnings, they can just skip over the PTC, and if the storm is, you know, generating pretty fast, and they can just go into watches and warnings, and what you need to know about that are the conditions. A watch means that the conditions are possible. Hurricane watch, hurricane conditions are possible. Within 48 hours, a warning is expected, meaning that it's going to happen within 48 hours. So, and the different watches and warnings that you'll hear: tropical storm, hurricane, storm surge, high winds. I got storm surge on there twice, but yeah. So, all right. So here's a fun little thing, some weather wisdom. So who has social media? And I'm sure you've been seeing things like this going around where this, and I took this last night myself. This is the GFS model. We love the GFS. We have a lot of different models that we use. We use the Canadian model. We use the European model. As meteorologists, we look at several models when we go into work. The GFS can be a little spunky sometimes, you know, wants to just, do what it does. So I took this last night. So looking at that, a lot of you are probably saying, oh crap, what's that? And unfortunately, we're in the day and age where there are, I'll call them hobbyists, where they like to put up pictures like this and frighten people. So the other models are not showing anything going on right now. What this is showing is an area low pressure that's pretty tight, and it looks like it could be a hurricane, right? So here's some weather wisdom for you. So if you see posts like this on social media, when I say these hobbyist accounts, these are people and there's some people out there that I really respect. I mean, I love anybody that loves the weather, but it's, what are you doing with that information? So there's people out there that, where they might have not gone to school for meteorology, but they're interested in it. That's fine. But if you're taking this and putting that up for clicks instead of actually giving information, or sometimes they'll twist it and they'll be like, oh, well, I'm looking at this, but the other models aren't saying anything. Well, anybody that's not reading into that and just looks at that is going to be frightened, especially anybody that lives in Florida and, just went through the year that we went through. So here's some weather wisdom. Any Seinfeld fans in here? Yeah? Okay. All right, so I have Jerry and Elaine, who are level-headed. They're not always right. We love them. They're the adults in the room, right? And I stole this from my friend Allison Ray. If anybody's from Fort Myers, she's the chief meteorologist there. Jerry and Elaine, they're reliable, right? That's the 0Z and the 12Z run. So we have Zulu time that we go off of when we look at these different weather models. And 0Z and 12Z, that's at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, and those are the models that we're saying, okay, they usually have a better grip on things. They're not, sporadic. They're not spitting out anything crazy. The 6Z and the 18Z, that's when it gets a little chaotic. That's the models that are more like George and Kramer, where you're like, all right, what are you talking about here? So, for you guys, when you see something like this posted online, I want you to ask yourself a couple things. First of all, look here at the top. What's the time that it has? So 12Z would be early in the morning. Okay, that's all right. But what about the date? May 30th. Well, this model I clipped this myself, but this model was put out yesterday. Well, that's okay, 24 to 48 hours, but sometimes you'll see, if you look at the date, and again, who's looking all the way up there? Somebody that doesn't watch or look at weather models every single day, they're just looking at that, right? But, meteorologists, we see that and we're saying, wait a second, sometimes that date will be from last week. And you're like, wait, you're using a model from last week to put up online, but again, they want to get clicks. They're getting monetized. Some of these accounts, unfortunately, if they're on YouTube and they're on Facebook and they're getting a bunch of clicks, guess what? Cha-ching, they're getting money. Every time you click that, every time you share that, every time they're getting a profit off of it. So although they may say that they have your best interest, and again, there's some great accounts out there, don't get me wrong, but, you just want to be aware. Also, something that you want to look at, the forecast hour. If we're talking 240 hours out, do the math. That's 10 days. So this model is 10 days out, right? A lot can happen in 10 days. So again, those are little things that I want you to look at. If you see this, I know it looks frightening. You're saying, whoa, what's that? Low pressure, this, pressure of 980 millibars. It's right at the tip of, the state. And then you look at all this up here. And again, I took this yesterday, pay attention. Is this the GFS model? Is this the European model? Are the other models agreeing with it? Where am I getting this information from? Before you share that, just think of all these things. Think of Jerry and Elaine. Are we being responsible? Are we being level-headed? So that's my little tidbit on that. That's my weather wisdom. All right, and then later on I'm going to be talking about after the storm, but I believe I'm passing it over to Allie, and she's going to talk about what's happening during the storm. So, okay.
Thank you, Colleen.
Clap for Colleen.
Welcome, Allie.
Hey guys, I'm ABC Action News meteorologist Allie Blake. Actually, my first day here in Tampa at my job was during Milton, so I was here during the storm. I will say that I have family in the Tampa Bay area in Lutz and Lakewood Ranch and Seminole. I'm from North Carolina, but I'm very familiar with this area. I grew up going to the beaches here, and I'm happy to be here and be here for you guys. We're talking now kind of about during the storm. And, you know, during the storm, a lot of different things are happening, you know, whether it be the wind, whether it be the water, all kinds of things. Preparing ahead of time is really the main thing, but the main thing I'm going to say is if they told you to evacuate, you guys all know the drill. You want to get out of your house. But if you decide to stay or there was no evacuation order, here's what you kind of need to be doing. At all times, make sure devices, mine was over there, I was going to hold it up, make sure your devices are charged, plugged in, because if your power goes out, then you're able to. During the storm is not the time to go set up your generator and to check on it. That's not what you want to do. Even if, you know, in Florida, the weather changes every 5 seconds, whether it's sunny or whether it's clear or whether it's raining, you don't want to go out during the storm if you get a brief sunshine period because it could get bad and escalate pretty quickly. You might think, hey, it's sunny right now, storm's probably done, I'm good. You don't want to risk that. There could be flying debris that could come up at any time. During the storm, you also want to make sure that at times you are at least elevated if you know that you are near the water, because, you know, water intrusion, you want to make sure that you are not on the lowest floor. You want to make sure you're up above. But I will say that we also get strong winds, so then that makes it tough. You know, if there's a tornado warning, you know, they say during a tornado you want to get to the lowest floor. And that's kind of something that meteorologists and officials go back and forth on. What's the best safety procedure? You know, you want to do what's best in that moment. If there's a tornado, just make sure that you are away from any windows. And during a hurricane, you want to be away from windows too, because things could come through the windows at any times, like debris. You want to make sure you're in a centralized area. Make sure you have access to alerts as you need them. Maybe keep a TV on or keep a weather radio on so you can continue to know what's going on. Because yes, power might go out, but at least you have the information that can tell you when it will stop and when it will end before you don't have the activity for that. Also, just make sure that you have your supplies. During the storm is not the time to leave. Oh, you drank all your water, you ate all your hurricane snacks. That's big tough. That's not the time to go out and go get more. That's the time you just hope for the best. Well, you hopefully are already prepared for that. I will say though, a lot of times during storms, if you did evacuate and you're not home and you're thinking, well, I'm really far away from my home in Madeira Beach, but I want to know what's going on. You know, you could always have cameras set up. If you do have cameras set up, yes, I know a lot of them take internet and maybe your internet goes out and you might not be able to see them, but at least you can try up until then to see what's going on, or maybe call a friend or a neighbor, you know, that's staying around. Hopefully they were able to leave if they were told to leave, but if not, then you can always go and see what's going on then. You want to, of course, make sure you can leave when the storm is over, but make sure you're safe when you leave your place anyways, because we want to make sure, you know, there could be standing water, there could be power lines and other things. Make sure you come back when officials tell you that you are good to do so. So that's during the storm. We've taken questions, or should we wait till the end for this? You can go after. Okay. Okay. All right. I'll let you go.
So we're going to have them run through their spill and talk to you guys, and after that, staff will start taking questions around sort of having all questions.
All right, I'm back. Okay, so after the storm, the role of TV news. So what the heck do we do afterwards? Well, it's usually cray-cray out there. So we have a saying at 10 Tampa Bay, at least every TV station has their own little jingles that they like to say, but I like ours. It's informed, prepared, connected, easy. And I put this mission together myself, just how I feel about, you know, my job. And it's to keep you informed, prepared, connected before, during, and after the storm, delivering the accurate information, timely updates to, and be your link between the local leaders and the community. And make sure you have the facts, the answers, and the support you need to stay safe and build stronger. So one of the things that we found last year, and storms prior to, was price gouging, right? The water, and excuse me if you haven't picked up, I'm from the Northeast, so sometimes it slips out and I say water, and I'm not going to apologize for it. But anyway, so one thing that we saw was that price gouging for gas, for supplies, plywood, crazy things that you would not think. I have a link on here that our investigative journalist did, Emerald. I don't know if we'll have time to show it because we are running a little bit long, but if anybody's interested, I can send that to you. But some of the things that we help out with, where to get gas, the latest on the power outages, FEMA updates, that was a big thing last year, especially in the Carolinas as well. River flood levels, that was another huge one. We had river flooding that went on for weeks in Hillsborough County and Pinellas County. The status of the bridges, that's another big one. That goes back to the evacuation. So some of these bridges, they'll close at 40 miles per hour, so you got to consider that. Like, do I have to go over a bridge? Is the bridge going to be closed? The city officials might choose to close it before, that 40 mile per hour threshold. If the water's splashing up on the bridge, it could be closed. So you have to consider that. And that goes back to having an alternate route, because if that bridge is closed, or if you're traveling and you run across some hazard, we don't want you driving through flooded water. You have to find another way. You have to have another way ready to go, another plan on backup. When the barrier islands reopened, that was another huge thing with Madeira Beach. I know Treasure Island, a lot of people were trying to go in there. And, unfortunately, some people really don't have the best intentions. I remember I was volunteering there and dropping off meals, and there were people trying to get into the barrier island. They wanted to, basically ransack some of the houses. And you hate to think about this, but people like to take advantage of those that are vulnerable. And, so again, this is all information that, if you have a concern, that's what the media is doing for you. And I know the media has been controversial in recent years, but at the end of the day, people like myself, we all live here, we all work here, we're part of this community just like you are. We have families here, we start our lives here, we work here for a reason. A lot of us meteorologists, this was the goal. We wanted to come to Florida because it's a, crazy weather market, and we're just passionate about what we do, and we're passionate about your concerns, and we want to make sure your needs are met. So we try to get the word out. Debris cleanup, dump truck timing. When's the dump truck coming and, picking up the stuff? Where do I take my stuff? Again, we had long lines last year, people going to different sites to dump their things, and surprise, the site's closed. Price gouging, went over that, and bad contractors. That's another big one. I know we were just talking insurance here. Very important to have all your insurance documents ready to go. When it comes to contractors, make sure you have somebody that's reliable. If something's fishy or, it seems like something's up, reach out to us. We have a whole investigative team that will dive into these topics. They would be more than willing to help you and, try to get an answer for you. Oh, and that's all I have. Do we have any questions?
Questions. Hold on a moment.
The music box. I love it.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your presentation, but my main concern with the weather people is, how are you predicting storm surge? Because last year, the storm surge prediction for Helene, I watched diligently to all the channels, and they really did not pinpoint the degree that the flooding would be. Most of my neighborhood was still there because Helene was further away than Debbie. And I have lived here for 39 years. I know what storm surge is, but even Dennis Phillips, who one of the most respected meteorologists that I watch, was saying 5 to 7 feet, and we always err on the higher one. I never heard this is going to be a major flooding event until it was too late. How are you predicting storm surge these days?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Storms, they change within 24 hours. We are doing our best, and we keep on top of the models the best we can. And Helene, That was a situation where, again, it rode along the coast the entire way. I mean, one good example to think of is Hurricane Ian, right? Anybody here for that? Hurricane Ian was supposed to hit here. And then 24 hours ahead of time, it went to Fort Myers. It changed track. And, you know, I know there's a lot of listen, I love a good conspiracy theory, right? You know, about weather modification and what we do. You know, if there's a blueprint out there, I wish I had it because, you know, we try to do our best. My answer to that is, you know, I just suggest being over-prepared than under-prepared. I mean, you're right. People have lived here all their lives. They've lived here for 30 years, and they have said to us, I never had flooding this far out. My house was built in, you know, 1956. I never had flooding. I think, Helene, this is where we get to the new normal. These storms are more powerful. They're stronger. We're also building our communities. You see, look all around. I know in my neighborhood, I live in Featherstown, they're building nonstop. And that also has an impact on the lands, how, you know, when it comes to drainage. So, yeah, you know, I'm with you. And storms change very quickly. That's why I suggest moving ahead of time and kind of getting evacuate. It doesn't hurt to evacuate ahead of time. It doesn't hurt to prepare your house ahead of time. That's why I would just say prepare for the worst. And I know it was days before we were changing it to, okay, from 5 to 7 foot storm surge. Now we're looking at 10 to 15 foot storm surge. And I remember saying, this is the storm surge that we saw with Ian I worked in Fort Myers, you know, so yeah, I mean, my best advice is to just understand that we're looking at a new normal where these storms are more powerful than ever before. And unfortunately, everybody likes to say, you know, every year it's above average outlook. Well, yeah, it is. We have warmer sea surface temperatures than we've experienced in a long time. And, you know, I don't want to get into like the political side of things, but I know people feel different ways about climate and, you know, our changing climate. But the numbers don't lie. Our water is warmer than before, and that leads to these mega systems. And if anybody did listen to the NOAA meeting when they announced their outlook for this year, they made a good point. Most major hurricanes start off as a tropical storm, and then they change rapidly. We're seeing rapid intensification where these storms, they'll have an eye wall replacement theory, and within hours, they go from a Cat 3 to a Cat 5. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on
Questions?
that. Okay.
Yeah, so Pinellas County, the floodplain manager is Lisa Foster. She's very well respected. I had a conversation with her before, Helene, and I said, Lisa, where are the flood examples? Where are they at right now? And she said, usually they're all over the place. She goes, these are so on point, we're going to get flooded upwards of 8 feet, if not higher. And it's not top secret information. And of course, rely on the Weather Channel, but also go to Pinellas County website, because the same information that I get, everybody can get as well. So it was out there. It just probably wasn't on the news.
Well, Weather Channel had a very good one. They had a forecast model of Gulfport. Does anybody remember 2-3 days before? The Weather Channel kept showing a digital 3D of 6 to 8 feet of water consuming the city of Gulfport. That's exactly what happened. So watch multiple. Channel 10 is awesome. ABC Action News are awesome, but they're not the only game in town. You got the Weather Channel, National Weather Service, NOAA, et cetera. Let's hope they all keep funded so that we get the information that we need. Keep in mind, technology has improved drastically since Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew was, here's a little storm, it's coming. Guess what? The North Atlantic current is gonna move it north. There were no models or anything, forecasting that. And even though the National Hurricane Center was right across the street from the University of Miami, you still had very limited knowledge compared to what we've had in the last 5 years. But the bottom line, the best that can be done in 2025, once that evacuation order is issued, leave the island. We will emphasize that forever and ever and ever. Evacuation order, please leave the island. Questions? Any other questions? Comments, questions, concerns? Oh, good catch.
Ow.
I just want to throw in one thing. I did stay, and I was driving down Gulf Boulevard, turned left off the causeway onto Gulf Boulevard at about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I believe it's the first beach access. It's right across the street from the parking lot where everybody goes to cross the street during parks in the old bank building. This is at 6:30. The water was 3 feet coming over that pass. As I drove home and parked my car at Treasure Island like a dummy, just didn't think about it. But I said, that looks bad, because I've lived here 60 years.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those, I've lived on Isla Capri for the first part of my life, and there was never water come over the edge of Isla Capri, and it had 7 foot in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
But that water was coming, so if you're here and you see that, you know it's going to be bad, but it's too late.
Yeah.
You just got to hang on, you're in for the ride.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget that, because it tells you that was it.
Yep.
I'm not going to throw it.
If I can,
go ahead.
if you don't mind, I would like to your point about the 3 feet of floodwaters right there. So there gets to a point where the fire department cannot respond any longer. It's either the water's too high, the winds are too high, and I'm not going to risk your firefighters' lives to rescue anybody that didn't evacuate. So it was 4:40. I'm going to get on my soapbox here.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 4:47 in the morning when I woke up the high water crew and said, "Hey, water's about 4 feet. You can get back out there." We had 226 calls waiting, the most of any fire department in Pinellas County. So I give them the first address. They go, and then they radio back saying that they're going to drop off people that they picked up, and they can fit 10 people in the back of that high water vehicle. So they get to Publix. That's the drop-off point. They made the drop-off, and I said, "Are you ready for the next address?" And they said, "We haven't even made it to the first address." They were getting people that were holding on to stop signs on roofs of houses. They got people out of trees. I can't emphasize enough to evacuate. I promise you, that is not ideal for anybody. So they didn't even make it to the first address. So we still had 226 calls waiting. But I'll get off my soapbox now.
And then post-storm, let's hope we don't have to deal with it, but debris removal. Who here likes debris removal? Hopefully nobody does. Staff went around to the city, posted on every property the guidelines for debris removal. We have it on our website. We will start to issue and remind folks, hopefully, again, we don't have to use it, but it is important to separate out the debris. That's the requirement. There are some handouts in the handouts on the table as to how to go ahead and process and place that out at the curb for future. Let's hope we don't have to use that, but please keep that in mind as well. Anything else from staff? Anything you'd like to add?
So as Robin mentioned, I've been with the city for over 10 years. We've only contracted with a debris company one other time and that was Irma. So Irma was a much different event. That was more of a wind event. So with that, you only have basically your tree, your landscaping debris. So we've not done that in this community, and that is very challenging. We understand, but unfortunately, that is a FEMA requirement. So when you have a debris company, you also then have to have a monitoring company. That monitoring company has to go through strict guidelines. So we understand the process is frustrating. We also get very frustrated. But in order for us to get that reimbursement, it must follow all of these guidelines. We picked up 144,000 cubic yards of debris in the city. That was the second largest municipality in Pinellas County. That is a astronomical number. So we understand the process takes a while, but unfortunately, we got it done within the 90 days, which was pretty unheard of. We were cutting it a little bit close, but we have the guidelines in there. We will issue that. We will ensure that if we are picking up the debris, it will not have to be separated that way. But if it is a FEMA event, it will have to be, or else they won't be able to pick it up. So if you have any questions about that, I will answer them now, or I'll be here.
We'll be here.
Thank you.
I see it coming down the road.
And with the debris, my neighbor's son wanted to interview me about storm recovery, so I took the amount of debris that she just gave you and converted it to buses. It would fill over 750 school buses, to give you an idea of how much debris we had to take off the island. The one thing that was a little disheartening when we were doing the debris pickup is houses that are post-firm and are elevated and are designed to only have storage, parking, and access at grade had washer and dryers, refrigerators, pool tables, an inordinate amount of drywall, arcade games. Those things should not be at ground level. We should not be paying to pick up illegal build-out material. So please be cognizant of what is allowed to be at ground level. It increased the time it took to remove debris from the city, and it increased the cost to remove it. So let's please be good stewards of your property and use it legally and correctly.
Any other questions, comments? Anything else? Thank you to our city staff as well as our guests from Channel 10 and ABC Action News and all of our speakers about turtles, how to prepare before, during, after the storm. And please, anytime, feel free to ask a question. Send us an email, a text, stop by City Hall. We are here 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. Let's hope we don't have to go back to that due to storms, but we will do whatever we need to do. This is the home for some of our employees who live here on the island, but certainly all of the city staff that work here really do everything that we can to make sure we have a great, great city. So thank you all very much for coming out, and please, if you have any questions, staff will stick around for a little bit, and share the info with your friends and neighbors. And happy hurricane season with no storms.